Get on your knees! Now! Officer Miles Davenport screamed, his hand trembling over his holster, veins bulging in his neck like tangled wires. The woman standing by the silver Aston Martin didn't flinch. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She stood with the stillness of a statue in a hurricane, her eyes dark, assessing, and terrifyingly calm. "Officer," she said, her voice dropping an octave, carrying a command authority that froze the air in the humidity. "If you put those cuffs on me, you are not just arresting a citizen, you are declaring war on the United States Pentagon." "Shut up! You think you're special because you drive a fancy car?" Miles shoved her against the hot metal. Click, click. "You're just another loudmouth who needs to learn her place." "My place," she whispered as the steel bit into her wrists, "is 4 stars above your pay grade." The dust motes dancing in the shaft of sunlight inside the old Wycliffe clock shop were the only things moving in the stagnant afternoon heat. General Sienna Wycliffe took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of cedar oil, brass polish, and 40 years of her father's labor. It smelled like safety. It smelled like the only place on Earth where she wasn't responsible for the movement of aircraft carriers or the geopolitical stability of the Pacific Rim. At 52, Sienna was a paradox. To the world, she was the Iron Lotus, the first black woman to hold her specific command within the Joint Chiefs' inner circle. Her uniform was a tapestry of campaigns fought and won, weighed down by ribbons that told stories of blood and sand. But here, in the sleepy, sun-drenched town of Oak Haven, she was just Sienna. She wore faded gray sweatpants, a plain white t-shirt that clung to her athletic frame, and paint-splattered sneakers. She ran a finger over the counter. She had taken a 3-week leave, forced leave actually. Burnout imminent, the military doctors had noted, mandatory decompression. So she had come home to sell the shop, or maybe save it. She wasn't sure yet. Outside, the heat was oppressive, a dry baking oven that shimmered off the asphalt. There was no rain in the forecast, just endless, relentless sun. Sienna locked the front door, the old brass bell jingling cheerfully, a stark contrast to the heaviness in her chest. She needed supplies from the hardware store in the next town over. She walked to her car, a vintage 1964 Aston Martin DB5. It was her one indulgence, a restoration project she had worked on for a decade between deployments. It was a machine of beauty, silver paint gleaming like a weapon. As she slid into the driver's seat, her phone buzzed. It was Colette Storm. Sienna smiled, tapping the speaker. "I thought I was on strict orders to ignore the Pentagon, Madam Undersecretary." Colette's voice was crisp, cutting through the static. "You are. I'm calling as your friend who knows you're probably staring at a wall and analyzing its structural integrity for a breach point. How is Oak Haven?" "Quiet," Sienna said, starting the engine. The purr was guttural and satisfying. "Too quiet. It feels small, Colette. I forgot how small it feels." "Small is good. Small means no red phones ringing at 3 a.m. Just relax, Sienna. Don't command anything. Don't strategize anything. Just be." "I'll try," Sienna promised, checking her mirrors. "I'm going to the hardware store. I'm going to buy paint. Beige, boring beige." "Living on the edge, General. I'll talk to you later." Sienna pulled out onto the main road. Oak Haven had changed, yet stayed exactly the same. The main street was gentrifying, with expensive coffee shops replacing the diners, but the outskirts were fraying at the edges. She noticed the new police cruisers patrolling, black, aggressive, looking more like urban assault vehicles than community safety cars. She drove precisely at the speed limit, 35 miles per hour. Discipline wasn't a coat she took off. It was her skin. 2 miles down the road, near the intersection of Elm and Pine, a black cruiser peeled out from a hidden speed trap behind a billboard. The lights flared, blue and red slicing through the bright daylight. Sienna checked her speedometer. 35. She checked her seatbelt. Fastened. She checked her mirrors. Clear. She sighed, a sound of irritation rather than fear. So much for boring. She pulled over onto the gravel shoulder, the dust billowing up around the Aston Martin. She kept her hands at the 10 and 2 position on the wheel, visible, steady. She expected a warning about a taillight, or perhaps a curious local cop wondering about the classic car. She watched the side mirror. 2 officers emerged. One was older, thick-set, with a buzz cut and a face that looked like it had been chiseled out of granite and resentment. That was Miles Davenport. She didn't know him, but she knew the type. She had commanded men like him, men who mistook aggression for strength. The other was younger, skittish, his hand resting nervously on his belt. Kai Norwood. Sienna rolled the window down exactly 4 inches. She didn't know it yet, but the peace she had come home for was about to shatter. The war hadn't been left in D.C., it was walking up to her window in mirrored sunglasses. License and registration. Miles Davenport didn't ask. He barked. He didn't lean in. He loomed, blocking out the sun. He wasn't looking at Sienna. He was looking at the leather interior, the dashboard, the expensive chronometer on her wrist. "Good afternoon, officer," Sienna said, her voice neutral. She moved slowly. "My license is in the center console. I am reaching for it now." "I didn't ask for a narration. I asked for the ID." Miles spat onto the dry gravel. Sienna paused. Her internal threat assessment triggered. Hostile, irrational, dominance display. She handed him the license. It was her civilian ID issuing State Virginia. It listed her address in Arlington, but nothing about her rank. Miles snatched it. He looked at the card, then at her, then at the car. "Virginia, you're a long way from home. This is a nice car. Whose is it?" "It is mine," Sienna said. "Yours?" Miles let out a short, incredulous laugh. He looked back at Kai. "She says it's hers, Norwood. You believe that? A school teacher from Virginia driving a $500,000 car?" "I am not a school teacher," Sienna said, her tone sharpening slightly. "And the vehicle is registered in my name. If you run the plates, you will see that." "Don't tell me how to do my job," Miles snapped, his face flushing. The heat was making everyone edgy, but this was more than heat. "Step out of the vehicle." Sienna tightened her grip on the wheel. "Officer, for a traffic stop, unless there is probable cause or an arrestable offense, I am safest inside the vehicle. Have I committed an infraction?" "I said step out." Miles unlatched his holster strap. Sienna calculated. If she stayed, he might escalate to breaking the window or drawing his weapon. If she exited, she was vulnerable, but it de-escalated the immediate threat to the vehicle. She unlocked the door and stepped out, rising to her full height. She was tall, 5'10", and possessed a posture that was perfectly vertical. She looked Miles directly in the eye, not with defiance, but with an equality that unsettled him. "Turn around. Hands on the hood," Miles commanded. "Officer," Sienna said, not moving, "you stopped me. You have not stated the reason for the stop. Pennsylvania versus Mims allows you to order me out, yes, but you still need a lawful basis for the detention. Is my taillight out? Was I speeding?" "You're talking back." Miles stepped into her personal space, the smell of stale tobacco and sweat radiating off him. "You're questioning my authority. That's obstruction." "That is the First Amendment," Sienna corrected calmly. "And citing the law is not obstruction. It is civic knowledge." That was the breaking point. For Miles Davenport, a man who had been passed over for promotion 3 times, whose wife had left him, and who felt the world was leaving him behind, this calm, intelligent black woman correcting him on the side of the road was an insult he couldn't process. "That's it," Miles growled. He grabbed her arm, twisting it violently behind her back. Sienna's combat training flared. Muscle memory screamed at her to drop her weight, sweep his leg, and neutralize the threat. It would have taken her less than 3 seconds to break his wrist. But she held back. She knew the optics. She knew the game. If she fought, she died, or she became the villain. "You are making a mistake," she said, wincing as he wrenched her shoulder up, and rotator cuff injury from a helicopter crash in Kabul flared with white-hot pain. "I am a senior officer in the United States Armed Forces." "Yeah, and I'm the King of England," Miles sneered. He shoved her face down onto the burning hot metal of the Aston Martin's trunk. "You're under arrest for disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and suspicion of grand theft auto." Kai Norwood stepped forward, looking at the registration on the iPad in his hand. Miles, the car comes back to a Sienna Wycliffe, no warrants." "It looks clean." "Shut up, Kai." Miles didn't look back. He ratcheted the handcuffs tight, too tight. "She fits the description of the B&E suspect from the Heights. She's coming in." "The suspect was a male, 6 feet tall," Sienna said, her cheek pressed against the silver paint. "I am neither." "I said shut up." Miles yanked her off the car and dragged her toward the cruiser. Sienna stumbled but regained her footing. She looked at Kai. The young officer looked away, shame burning his ears, but he didn't intervene. He opened the back door of the cruiser. "Officer Norwood," Sienna said, reading his name tag as she was shoved inside. "Remember this moment. You had a choice." The door slammed shut. The interior was a cage of hard plastic and stale air. Sienna closed her eyes, centering her breathing. The pain in her shoulder was throbbing, but a cold, icy resolve was settling in her chest. They had taken her freedom, but they had just handed her a weapon. They hadn't checked her trunk. They hadn't checked her glove box. And they certainly hadn't checked the restricted database that flagged her name. The Oak Haven Police Precinct was a relic of the 1970s, all brown tiles, flickering fluorescent lights, and peeling paint. It was a place where hope went to die of boredom. Miles paraded Sienna through the bullpen like a trophy hunter. He gripped her upper arm, his fingers digging in unnecessarily. He wanted a reaction. He wanted tears. He wanted her to scream, "I didn't do anything!" so he could tell her to shut up again. But Sienna walked with a stride that matched a military march. Even in handcuffs, even in sweatpants, she surveyed the room. She noted the lack of security cameras in the hallway. She noted the disorganized evidence desk. She noted the way the other officers looked up, saw a black woman in cuffs, and immediately looked back down, indifferent. "Booking," Miles announced to the desk sergeant, a tired woman named Evelyn who didn't look up from her crossword. "Name?" Evelyn asked. "Sienna Wycliffe," Sienna answered clearly. "Possessions." Miles dumped the contents of her pockets on the counter. A sleek titanium phone, a minimalist leather wallet, a set of keys. "Take the cuffs off for prints," Evelyn sighed. Miles unlocked them. Sienna rubbed her wrists. Deep red welts were already forming. She rotated her shoulder, hearing a sickening pop. "You got a problem?" Miles challenged, leaning against the counter. "I need my phone call," Sienna said. "After processing, sit over there." Miles pointed to a metal bench bolted to the floor. At that moment, the double doors at the front of the station swung open. Chief Raphael Ashford strode in, flanked by a woman in a sharp navy blazer, Sabrina Sunfield, the district attorney. Raphael was a man who cultivated an image of approachability. He was handsome in a rugged way, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was the architect of Oak Haven's Tough on Crime initiative, which mostly involved harassing the residents of the South Side to keep the property values up on the North Side. "Good work on the raid last night, boys," Raphael called out, shaking hands. He glanced at the bench where Sienna sat. He paused. Something about her stillness caught him. He looked at her clothes, expensive sneakers, though dirty. The posture. For a second, a flicker of recognition sparked in his brain. He had seen that face before. On the news? In a briefing? "Who's this?" Raphael asked, nodding toward Sienna. "Traffic stop turned resistant," Miles said, puffing out his chest. "Driving a stolen Aston Martin. Disorderly. Refused to identify." "I provided identification," Sienna corrected from the bench. "Officer Davenport refused to acknowledge it." Raphael frowned. He didn't like suspects who spoke in complete sentences. He looked at Sabrina. "We don't need bad press, Miles," Sabrina said, checking her watch. "Is she local?" "Claimed she's from Virginia. Said she's military." Miles made air quotes, snickering. Sabrina rolled her eyes. "Right, and I'm the Queen of Sheba. Just process her and get her out on bail. We have the budget meeting in 20 minutes. They turned away. They dismissed her. To them, she was just paperwork. Sienna stood up. "Chief Ashford." The room went silent. She didn't shout, but her voice carried that peculiar resonance of command that stops bustling rooms. Raphael turned back slowly. "Sit down. I am invoking my right to a phone call, now, before you book me, before you create a record that you will spend the rest of your life trying to erase." Miles stepped forward, reaching for his baton. "I told you to sit." "Let her make the call, Miles," Raphael said, his eyes narrowing. The chief's instinct was twitching. The woman was too calm. "Give her the phone. Let's see who she calls. Probably a bail bondsman." Evelyn slid the titanium phone across the counter. Sienna picked it up. She didn't scroll through contacts. She dialed a number from memory. A number that didn't go to a cell tower, but routed through a secure, encrypted switchboard in Arlington. She put the phone to her ear. The room watched, mesmerized by her gravity. "Voice print verification," Sienna said into the receiver. "Wycliffe, Sienna, Alpha Zulu 94, authorization code, Valkyrie." Miles laughed nervously. "Who is she talking to? Star Trek?" Sienna held up a hand, silencing him with a glare that felt like a physical blow. "Connect me to General Storm's direct line. Priority 1. "Yes, I know she's in a briefing with the secretary. Interrupt it." A pause. Sabrina Sunfield stopped checking her watch. Raphael Ashford took a half-step closer. "Colette?" Sienna's voice changed. It wasn't friendly anymore. It was cold steel. "It's Sienna. I need you to initiate Protocol 7. She paused, listening. "No," Sienna said, looking directly at Miles Davenport, capturing his soul with her gaze. "I am currently being held at the Oakhaven Police Precinct. I have been assaulted, unlawfully detained, and denied medical attention for a rotator cuff injury. The arresting officers are Davenport and Norwood. The supervising officer is Chief Raphael Ashford." She listened again. "Yes. They are listening. No. They don't believe me." Sienna pulled the phone away from her ear and hit the speaker button. She placed it gently on the counter. A voice, authoritative, sharp, and terrifyingly loud, filled the booking room. "This is General Colette Storm, Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. Who is the ranking officer in this room?" Raphael Ashford's face went the color of ash. He stared at the phone as if it were a bomb. "I asked," the voice boomed, "who is holding a 4-star general of the United States Army in a cage like a common criminal?" Miles Davenport dropped his baton. It clattered on the floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the sudden, suffocating silence. Sienna leaned back against the wire mesh of the holding cell. "I believe," she said softly. "That question is for you, Chief." Chief Raphael Ashford stared at the titanium phone on the counter as if it were a radioactive isotope. The voice of General Colette Storm, Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, still echoed in the cheap acoustic tiles of the ceiling. "Chief Ashford," Sienna said, her voice dropping to that terrifyingly calm register again. "Pick up the phone." Raphael's hand shook. He was a man who built his career on small-town intimidation and golf course politics. He knew how to handle a drunk councilman or a rebellious teenager. He did not know how to handle the Pentagon. He picked up the device. "This is Chief Ashford," he croaked. "Chief Ashford." Colette's voice was crystal clear, stripping away his title with every syllable. "You are currently in command of a precinct that has unlawfully detained a high-value asset of the United States government. You have exactly 10 minutes before federal assets arrive at your location. In that time, you will do 3 things. Raphael swallowed hard. "General, I think there's been a 1. Colette cut him off, her tone brokering no interruption. "You will remove the restraints from General Wycliffe immediately. 2. You will secure all body camera footage, dash cam footage, and dispatch logs from the last 4 hours. If a single second of footage is corrupted or lost, I will personally ensure you spend the next 20 years in Leavenworth. 3. You will place Officer Miles Davenport under administrative hold in a separate room. Do you copy?" Raphael looked at Miles. The older officer's face had gone from red to a pasty, sickly white. The arrogance was draining out of him, replaced by the primal fear of a bully who has finally punched a wall that punches back. "I copy," Raphael whispered. "Louder, Chief," Sienna commanded from the bench. "I copy," Raphael shouted, slamming the phone down. He fumbled for his keys, rushing toward the holding cell. "Open it! Get her out! Now!" He unlocked the gate with trembling fingers. Sienna stepped out. She didn't rub her wrists. She didn't look grateful. She looked at him with the clinical detachment of a surgeon looking at a tumor. "My phone," she said, holding out her hand. Raphael handed it to her. She checked the connection. Colette was still on the line. "I'm out, Colette," Sienna said into the receiver. "Status?" "Marina is 20 minutes out. She was at Quantico. She's taking a chopper. The FBI field office in Richmond has been notified. They're sending a corruption task force. Sit tight, Sienna. Don't engage." "Understood." Sienna hung up. She turned to the room. The dynamic had shifted tectonically. 5 minutes ago, she was a prisoner. Now she was the highest-ranking authority in the building. "Officer Norwood," Sienna said. Kai jumped, nearly dropping his notepad. "Yes, ma'am, General. Get me a chair, a clean one. Place it in the center of the room. Then get me a glass of water. Sealed bottle." "Yes, ma'am." Kai scrambled, grabbing a chair from the sergeant's desk and placing it exactly where she pointed. He sprinted to the vending machine, bought a water, and cracked the seal in front of her before handing it over. Sienna sat. She crossed her legs, wincing slightly as her shoulder protested, but her face remained a mask of stone. "Chief Ashford, you heard the general. Secure the footage." "Now wait a minute." Miles Davenport stepped forward, his panic curdling back into aggression. "You can't just take over my precinct. I don't care who you are on the phone with. You assaulted a police officer. You resisted arrest. I have rights." Sienna looked at him. It wasn't a glare. It was a look of profound pity mixed with disgust. "Officer Davenport," she said softly, "you have rights. You also have a record. And in about 30 minutes, a JAG officer named Lieutenant Colonel Marina Bracken is going to walk through those doors. She is going to peel your life apart like an onion. She will find every excessive force complaint you've buried. She will find every lost evidence bag. She will find the ex-wife you stopped paying alimony to." Miles's eyes widened. "How do you—" "I am an intelligence general, Miles." Sienna lied smoothly. She didn't know about the alimony, but men like Miles always had financial leverage points. "I know everything." "Chief, are you going to let her talk to me like this?" Miles pleaded, looking to Raphael. Raphael was busy frantically typing on the dispatch computer, locking down the files. He didn't even look up. "Shut up, Miles. Go to the break room. Stay there." "But go!" Raphael screamed, his voice cracking. Miles stormed off, kicking a trash can as he went. The slam of the break room door echoed through the station. Sienna took a sip of water. She watched Kai Norwood standing awkwardly by the wall. "You're scared, Kai," she observed. "Yes, General," he whispered. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Use it. Because when Colonel Bracken gets here, the truth is the only thing that will save you. Do you understand?" I didn't want to arrest you, Kai stammered. Miles, he gets like that. And you let him, Sienna said, her voice hard. Complicity is a choice, officer. Today, you make a different one. Outside, the distinctive thwup, thwup, thwup of rotor blades began to vibrate the windows. The sound grew louder, shaking the dust from the ceiling tiles. Sienna checked her watch. Right on time. The precinct doors didn't open. They were assaulted. Lieutenant Colonel Marina Bracken didn't walk. She advanced. She was a woman of sharp angles and terrifying efficiency, dressed in Army service greens that were tailored to perfection. She carried a leather briefcase like it contained the nuclear codes. Flanking her were 4 military police officers, giants in berets with MP emblazoned on their brassards. Behind them trailed 2 men in dark suits, FBI. Marina stopped in the center of the bullpen. She scanned the room, her eyes locking onto Sienna. She offered a crisp, perfect salute. General Wycliffe, Marina said, permission to secure the perimeter. Sienna stood and returned the salute, ignoring the screaming pain in her shoulder. Permission granted, Colonel. The objective is data preservation and personnel containment. Understood. Marina turned to the MPs. Secure the exits. No one leaves, no one enters. Agent Miller, Agent Ross, the server room is to the left. Clone everything. Raphael Ashford stood up from his desk, trying to muster some dignity. He smoothed his tie. Now hold on. This is a municipal building. You have no jurisdiction to... Marina was in his face in 2 strides. She didn't shout. She produced a piece of paper from her briefcase and held it up. Federal warrant, signed by a FISA judge 20 minutes ago, authorizing the seizure of all electronic data related to the detention of a senior military official. Obstruction of this warrant is a federal felony carrying a minimum of 10 years. Do you want to discuss jurisdiction, Chief, or do you want to show me the server room? Raphael wilted. He looked at the FBI agents who were already plugging drives into the computers. He looked at the MPs guarding the door. He slumped. Second door on the left. Marina nodded and turned back to Sienna. Her demeanor softened instantly. Sienna, are you hurt? Rotator cuff, Sienna admitted, rolling her shoulder. And the cuffs were tight. But I'm fine, Marina. I need you to focus on the paperwork. The medic is outside, Marina said. Go, I'll handle the trash. Sienna walked out into the blinding afternoon sun. An Army medical Humvee was parked right on the sidewalk, blocking the hydrants. A medic was waiting. As Sienna sat on the back of the Humvee, having her shoulder examined, she saw a black sedan screech to a halt. Mayor Sabrina Sunfield jumped out. She looked frantic. Her perfectly sprayed hair was starting to wilt in the heat. General Wycliffe, Sabrina called out, putting on her best campaign smile as she ducked under the MP's arm, until the MP gently but firmly blocked her path. Let her through, Sienna said to the medic. I want to hear this. Sabrina hurried over, breathless. General, oh my God, I had no idea. This is all a terrible, terrible mistake. Miles Davenport is a rogue element. We've been trying to fire him for months. I just want you to know that the city of Oak Haven has the utmost respect for our veterans. Sienna buttoned her shirt back up, wincing. Mayor Sunfield. Veteran implies I used to serve. I am currently active duty, and Miles Davenport isn't a rogue element. He's a symptom. We can fix this. Sabrina lowered her voice, leaning in. We can drop all charges immediately. Expunge the arrest. I can even organize a press conference, honor you with a key to the city. We don't need the feds tearing up our town, do we? Think of the property values. Think of the peace you came here for. Sienna looked at the mayor. She saw the fear in Sabrina's eyes. It wasn't fear for Sienna. It was fear for herself. You know what I found interesting, Mayor? Sienna asked calmly. When Miles arrested me, he mentioned a suspect for a break-in, but he didn't care about the description. He just wanted the arrest, and then he mentioned seizing the car. Sienna stood up, towering over the mayor. I've been reading the local news while I waited, Sienna continued. Oakhaven has a 300% increase in asset forfeiture seizures in the last 2 years. You're seizing cars, cash, and homes from out-of-towners and locals who can't afford lawyers. You're funding your budget deficit with highway robbery. Sabrina's smile vanished. That's a serious accusation. It's a hypothesis, Sienna corrected. But Colonel Bracken is inside right now, and if she finds a pattern, well, property values will be the least of your worries. You're declaring war on this town, Sabrina hissed, her mask slipping completely. You think because you have stars on your shoulder you can bully us? This is my town. These are my people. They won't like an outsider coming in and destroying their police force. I'm not an outsider, Sabrina, Sienna said, stepping closer. I grew up in the clock shop on 4th Street. I'm not here to destroy the town, I'm here to clean it. Sabrina stepped back, her eyes cold. Be careful, Sienna. Oakhaven has a way of handling things that don't fit. Accidents happen. Old shops catch fire. It was a threat. Veiled, but clear. Sienna laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Mayor, I have hunted terrorists in caves and negotiated with warlords who skinned people for sport. Do you really think I'm afraid of a PTA president with a budget deficit? Sabrina turned on her heel and marched away, pulling out her phone. Sienna watched her go. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a deep, aching exhaustion. She looked at the precinct. Marina was inside, tearing it apart. Justice was a machine, and she had turned the key. But as she looked at the sleepy streets of Oakhaven, Sienna realized the mayor was right about one thing. The town wouldn't thank her. To them, she was the chaos. By the next morning, the narrative had already been spun. Sienna sat in the back room of the Wycliffe clock shop, nursing a cup of coffee. Her shoulder was in a sling, the pain a dull, rhythmic throb. On the small television on her workbench, the local news was playing. Chaos at the precinct yesterday caused by a visiting military official who reportedly became violent during a routine traffic stop, the anchor said, her face grave. Sources close to the mayor say the officer involved, a decorated 20-year veteran, is being unfairly targeted by federal overreach. Mayor Sunfield is calling for calm and unity against what she calls DC bullying. They showed a picture of Sienna. It wasn't her official command photo. It was a grainy, zoomed-in shot from yesterday, looking disheveled and angry as she was shoved into the cruiser. They made her look unhinged. Then they showed Miles Davenport, arm in a sling, which he definitely didn't need, looking somber and victimized. Unbelievable, Sienna muttered. Her phone buzzed. It was Marina. They're shredding paper files, Marina said without preamble. We got the digital stuff, but the physical logs for the asset seizures are missing from the archives. We need a witness, Sienna. We need someone who knows where the bodies are buried. Kai Norwood, Sienna said. The kid? He's terrified. He hasn't said a word since we took over. He's claiming the 5th. He's loyal to the badge, Sienna said. I need to talk to him, off the record, without the suits. Risky. If you approach him, the defense will claim witness tampering. I'm not going to tamper with him, Sienna said, standing up. I'm going to clock him. Sienna grabbed her keys. She didn't take the Aston Martin. It was still impounded. Another battle for Marina. She took her father's old, rusted pickup truck from the garage. She drove to the address listed in the phone book for Kai Norwood. It was a small, run-down apartment complex on the south side, the part of town Raphael Ashford liked to harass. She parked and walked up the stairs. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Kai, open the door. She heard movement inside, then silence. I know you're in there, Kai. I saw your car. The door cracked open. Kai looked awful. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale. He was wearing civilian clothes, a hoodie pulled up as if to hide. You shouldn't be here, he whispered, looking down the hallway. Miles. Miles called. He said if I talk to the feds, I'm dead. He said I'm an accessory. Let me in, Sienna said gently. Kai hesitated, then stepped back. The apartment was sparse. A futon, a TV, and stacks of law enforcement textbooks. Sienna picked one up. Criminal Procedure and Ethics. The spine was cracked, well read. You wanted to be a good cop, Sienna said, placing the book down. I am a good cop, Kai said defensively. No, you're a bystander. And in my line of work, bystanders get people killed. Sienna sat on the edge of the futon. Miles is going down, Kai. The digital evidence is enough to bury him for the unlawful arrest. But the financial stuff? The mayor? That's the rot. If you help us, Marina can get you immunity. You can start over. Be a cop somewhere that actually respects the badge. Kai paced the room. You don't understand. This town, it's small. Everyone knows everyone. If I turn on Miles, my family, my dad works for the city, my mom teaches at the elementary school, they'll be pariahs. They will be pariahs when the FBI indicts the entire department and you're listed as a co-conspirator, Sienna countered. Respect is earned, Kai. Sometimes it costs you everything. Suddenly, a brick shattered the front window. Glass exploded inward. Sienna reacted instantly, tackling Kai to the floor as a second brick sailed through, followed by a Molotov cocktail. The bottle smashed against the far wall. Flames erupted, licking up the cheap drywall and curtains. Get up! Sienna roared, hauling Kai to his feet. My stuff! Kai screamed, reaching for his textbooks. Leave it! Sienna shoved him toward the door. They burst out into the hallway. The fire alarm began to wail. Sienna kicked the door of the neighbor's apartment. Fire! Get out! They scrambled down the stairs and into the parking lot. A dark pickup truck was peeling away, tires screeching. Sienna squinted through the smoke. She caught the license plate, OAK 99. That's Miles's truck, Kai gasped, coughing. He tried to burn me out. Sienna looked at the young officer. He was trembling, watching his apartment window belch black smoke. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard realization. The brotherhood he thought he belonged to had just tried to kill him. Sienna put a hand on his shoulder. It was heavy, grounding. He didn't just try to burn you out, Kai, Sienna said grimly. He just made his decision. Now you have to make yours. Kai wiped soot from his face. He looked at the burning building, then at Sienna. His jaw set. Take me to Colonel Bracken, he said. While Kai was giving his deposition to Marina in the secure room of the Holiday Inn, the temporary FBI HQ, Sienna returned to the clock shop. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the street. She was exhausted. Her shoulder felt like it was on fire. She unlocked the shop door and froze. The bell didn't jingle. It had been ripped off. Inside, the shop was a ruin. Display cases were smashed. Antique clocks, her father's life work, were swept off the shelves, their gears and springs scattered across the floor like the entrails of mechanical beasts. The smell of spray paint was thick in the air. On the back wall, in jagged red letters, were the words, "Go back to Africa or die." Sienna stood amidst the wreckage. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She felt a coldness settle over her that was absolute zero. This wasn't just vandalism. This was a hate crime. This was a message. She walked to the counter. Her father's favorite piece, a 19th century grandfather clock, lay splintered on the floor. She picked up a brass gear, feeling its weight. She heard a crunch of glass behind her. "I told you," a voice sneered from the shadows of the back room. "Old shops catch fire. Or they just break." Miles Davenport stepped out. He was holding a crowbar. He looked unhinged, sweat dripping down his face, his eyes wide and manic. He smelled of gasoline. "You burned Kai's apartment," Sienna said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Little rat was gonna squeal," Miles shrugged, slapping the crowbar into his palm. "But you're the problem. You come here with your fancy car and your attitude. You think you're better than us? I am better than you, Miles, Sienna said. Not because of my rank, because I don't attack children and burn homes. You're alone here, General, Miles grinned, stepping over the broken glass. No phone, no feds, just you and me, resisting arrest, suspect attacked officer, tragic self-defense shooting. He reached for his service weapon with his good hand. Sienna didn't wait. She didn't have a weapon. She didn't need one. She threw the brass gear. It was a heavy, solid piece of metal, and she threw it with the precision of a pitcher. It struck Miles square in the forehead. He grunted, stumbling back, dazed. The crowbar clattered to the floor. Sienna closed the distance. She moved like water. She ignored the pain in her shoulder. She kicked his knee, a targeted strike to the patella. Something crunched. Miles screamed and went down. He tried to raise the gun. Sienna stepped on his wrist, applying pressure until his fingers sprang open. She kicked the gun away. She grabbed him by his collar and hauled him up, slamming him against the defaced wall. Her forearm pressed against his windpipe. You wanted a war, Miles? She whispered, her face inches from his. You wanted to see what a general does? She tightened her grip. Miles gagged, his eyes bulging. We don't just win, she hissed. We end it. The front door burst open. Federal agents, drop it! Marina Bracken and 3 FBI agents rushed in, weapons drawn. Sienna didn't look at them. She kept her eyes on Miles, watching the light fade from his terrified pupils. General Wycliffe, Marina shouted. Stand down! We have him! Stand down! Sienna held him for 1 second longer, long enough for Miles to know that he was alive only because she allowed it. She released him. Miles slid to the floor, gasping for air, sobbing. Sienna turned to Marina. She straightened her shirt. She dusted the glass off her hands. He's all yours, Colonel, Sienna said calmly. And add attempted murder to the charge sheet. The interrogation room at the makeshift FBI headquarters smelled of stale coffee and fear. Miles Davenport sat hunched over the metal table, his arm in a sling, a bandage on his forehead where the brass gear had struck him. He looked smaller now, the bulky arrogance deflated by the reality of federal custody. Lieutenant Colonel Marina Bracken placed a folder on the table. She didn't sit. She stood, looming, her shadow falling over him. Attempted murder, Marina stated, her voice devoid of emotion. Arson, witness intimidation, assault on a federal officer, conspiracy to commit fraud, deprivation of rights under color of law. She leaned in. Do you know what the sentencing guidelines are for that cocktail, Miles? You'll be eligible for parole when the sun burns out. Miles sobbed. It was a pathetic, wet sound. I was just following orders. The chief, the mayor, they said it was necessary. They said we had to protect the town's revenue. Revenue, Marina repeated, disgusted. She opened the folder, revealing spreadsheets. We've traced the seizures. The public safety fund isn't going to the precinct, is it? It's routing through a shell company in the Cayman Islands, Sunfield Consulting Group. Miles looked up, his eyes wide. I didn't know about the Caymans. I just got the cash bonuses, in envelopes. The chief handed them out every Friday if we met the quota. The quota, Sienna's voice came from the corner of the room. She stepped into the light. Her arm was still in a sling, but her presence filled the room. You had a quota for arresting innocent people? Miles flinched, unable to look her in the eye. 5 seizures a week, cars, jewelry, cash. If we didn't hit it, the chief, he'd put us on night shift. He'd threaten our pensions. He said the mayor needed the numbers up to balance the budget before the election. Sienna looked at Marina. He's a pawn, a dangerous, violent pawn, but a pawn nonetheless. We need the kings and queens. Where is Chief Ashford? Marina asked sharply. He's running, Miles blurted out. He has a go bag in his office safe. Passports, cash. He said if the feds ever came, he was going to a non-extradition country. He mentioned Brazil. Sienna turned to the FBI agents monitoring the feed. Track his phone, lock down the airports, put an APB on his personal vehicle. Already done, General, Agent Miller replied. But his phone is off. He's gone dark. He won't go to the airport, Sienna deduced, her tactical mind engaging. He's a creature of habit and improved status. He won't fly commercial, and he won't risk TSA. He has a boat, the marina on the river. It connects to the intracoastal. Get a team to the marina, Marina ordered. Now! 5 miles away, the Oak Haven Marina was shrouded in the evening mist. Raphael Ashford, no longer the composed chief of police, was sweating through his polo shirt. He dragged a heavy duffel bag along the dock toward his cabin cruiser. The lawman. He was shaking. The call from Miles had been cut short, but he knew enough. The Pentagon wasn't just investigating, they were dissecting his life. He threw the bag onto the deck and scrambled aboard, fumbling with the keys. The engine roared to life. Going somewhere, Raphael? The voice came from the dock. Raphael spun around, reaching for the ankle holster he still wore. Kai Norwood stepped out from behind a pylon. He was bruised, his clothes smelled of smoke, but his gun was drawn and steady. Don't do it, Chief, Kai said, his voice trembling slightly, but his aim true. Norwood, Raphael sneered, his hand hovering near his calf. You traitor. I made you. I hired you when you were just a snot-nosed kid. You didn't make me, Kai said. You tried to break me. You tried to turn me into Miles, but I'm not Miles. Move aside, kid. I'm leaving. And if you try to stop me, I'll drop you right here. You can try, Kai said. But look up. Raphael looked up. Hovering silently above the marina was a black military drone, its red eye blinking. And behind Kai, moving silently down the dock, were 4 FBI SWAT agents, their rifles raised. It's over, Raphael, Kai said, lowering his weapon slightly as the agents moved past him to secure the boat. The general sends her regards. Raphael Ashford slumped against the wheel, the fight draining out of him. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, he looked at Kai. She's going to destroy the town, Raphael muttered. No, Kai said, watching the agents haul his former boss away. She's just taking out the trash. With Ashford in custody and Miles singing like a canary, only one pillar of corruption remained, Mayor Sabrina Sunfield. But Sabrina was a politician. She didn't run. She spun. The next morning, flyers plastered the town. Emergency town hall. Protect Oak Haven. Stop the federal takeover. The community center was packed. The air conditioner struggled against the heat of 500 bodies. On stage, Sabrina Sunfield stood in front of a giant American flag. She looked impeccable, the picture of a beleaguered public servant fighting for her people. My friends, Sabrina began into the microphone, her voice wavering with practiced emotion. Our beloved town is under attack, not by criminals, but by the very government that is supposed to protect us. A Washington insider, a general who hasn't lived here in 30 years, has come back to dictate how we live. She has arrested our brave chief. She has assaulted our officers. She claims our public safety initiatives are illegal. But I ask you, do you feel safer? There were murmurs of agreement from the front rows. Plants, Sienna knew. She wants to bankrupt our city, Sabrina shouted, gaining momentum. She wants to defund our police. She represents everything wrong with the elite. Is that so? The doors at the back of the hall didn't just open. They were pushed wide by 2 FBI agents. Sienna Wycliffe walked in. She wasn't wearing her uniform. She wore a simple black dress, her arm in a black sling. She looked elegant, severe, and undeniably local. She walked down the center aisle, the crowd parting for her like the Red Sea. Behind her walked a dozen people. They were a motley crew, an elderly man in a faded suit, a young mother holding a baby, a mechanic in grease-stained overalls. Sienna stopped at the base of the stage. She looked up at Sabrina. You have the microphone, Mayor, Sienna said. her voice projecting to the rafters without amplification. "But I have the receipts." "Security!" Sabrina shrieked. "Remove her!" The two security guards at the side of the stage looked at Sienna. Then they looked at the FBI agents standing by the doors. They crossed their arms and did nothing. Sienna turned to the crowd. "I am not here as a general," Sienna said. "I am here as Robert Wycliffe's daughter. You all knew him. He fixed your watches. He fixed your grandfather clocks. He taught me that a mechanism only works if every gear is honest." She gestured to the people behind her. "This is Mr. Henderson," Sienna pointed to the elderly man. "He was driving through Oak Haven 2 months ago to visit his grandkids. Officer Davenport stopped him for a flickering taillight. They seized his car and the $5,000 cash he had saved for his granddaughter's tuition. They called it suspicious funds. He never got a hearing. That money went into the mayor's re-election fund." The crowd gasped. Murmurs of, "Is that true?" rippled through the room. "This is Maria," Sienna pointed to the young mother. "She was pulled over because her music was too loud. They seized her vehicle. She lost her job because she couldn't get to work. Her car is currently being driven by the mayor's nephew." Sabrina's face went pale. "Lies. These are lies." Sienna pulled a stack of documents from her bag. She tossed them onto the stage. They scattered at Sabrina's feet. Bank statements, emails, seizure logs. "It's all there, Sabrina," Sienna said quietly. "The offshore accounts, the emails instructing Ashford to target out-of-state plates and urban drivers, the instructions to burn Officer Norwood's apartment." The room went deadly silent. "You didn't protect Oak Haven," Sienna said. "You sold it. You turned our police force into highwaymen. You turned our town into a speed trap for profit." Sienna turned back to the crowd. "I fought for this country for 30 years. I have seen what happens when leaders use fear to line their pockets. It destroys communities. Don't let her destroy this one." A slow clapping started. It was Kai Norwood, standing at the back in his dress uniform. Then the mechanic joined in. Then Mr. Henderson. Soon the entire room was applauding, a thunderous sound of rejection. Sabrina Sunfield backed away from the podium, shaking her head. No, you don't understand." Marina Bracken stepped onto the stage from the wings. She held up a pair of handcuffs. "Sabrina Sunfield," Marina announced into the microphone. "You are under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy." As the cuffs clicked shut, the applause died down, replaced by a heavy, solemn silence. It wasn't a victory of joy. It was the relief of a fever breaking. 3 months later. The heat had finally broken, replaced by the crisp, golden light of autumn. The leaves on the oak trees were turning russet and gold. The Wycliffe clock shop was open. The front window had been replaced. The display cases were new. The smell of cedar and brass polish was back, stronger than the smell of smoke. Sienna stood at the workbench, a jeweler's loop in her eye. She was working on the escapement of a 1920s mantel clock. Her hands were steady. Her shoulder had healed, though it still ached when it rained. The bell above the door jingled. "General!" a voice called out. Sienna looked up. It was Acting Chief Kai Norwood. He looked different. He stood taller. His uniform fit better. The skittishness was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. "Kai," Sienna smiled, removing the loop. "Or should I say Chief?" "Interim Chief," Kai corrected modestly. "The city council is doing a nationwide search, but they asked me to apply." "You should," Sienna said. "You earned it." "I wanted to stop by," Kai said, leaning on the counter. "Miles took a plea deal today. 15 years. He gave up everything on the mayor's network. Sabrina is looking at 20. "Justice," Sienna nodded. "It grinds slow, but it grinds fine. And I wanted to give you this." Kai slid a small box across the counter. Sienna opened it. It was a brass key. "Key to the city?" Sienna raised an eyebrow. Key to the back door of the precinct, Kai grinned. In case you ever need to come in and yell at us again. We kept the chair you sat in. We call it the General's Throne. Sienna laughed. It was a genuine light sound. I hope I never have to use it. Are you staying? Kai asked, his voice serious. The Pentagon called. They want you back. I saw it on the news. They're offering you a promotion. Sienna looked around the shop. She looked at the clocks, hundreds of them, ticking in imperfect unison. She thought about the war room in D.C., the screens, the life and death decisions. I have 30 years of leave saved up, Sienna said, and this shop isn't going to run itself. The Pentagon can wait. I have a backlog of watches to fix. Kai smiled. Good. Oakhaven needs a clockmaker. He turned to leave. Oh, and General, drive safe. The speed limit is strictly enforced. I wouldn't have it any other way, Sienna replied. As the door closed, Sienna returned to the mantel clock. She adjusted the pendulum. She gave it a gentle push. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The rhythm was steady. The mechanism was honest. The time was right. Sienna Wycliffe walked out to the curb, where the silver Aston Martin DB5 sat gleaming in the autumn sun. It was fully restored, the dents from the arrest smoothed out, the paint flawless. She ran her hand over the cold metal. She had come home looking for peace and found a war. But in fighting it, she had found something else. She had found that the oath she took to support and defend the Constitution didn't just apply to foreign enemies. It applied here, on the dusty streets of her childhood. It applied to the Mr. Hendersons and the Marias. She realized that true authority isn't about the stars on your shoulder or the volume of your voice. It's about the courage to stand still when the world tells you to move. It's about the integrity to hold the line, even when you are the only one on it. Sienna slid into the driver's seat. She turned the key. The engine roared to life, a powerful, defiant sound. She put the car in gear and drove slowly down Main Street, waving at the new bakery owner, nodding at Kai as his cruiser passed by. She wasn't just the Iron Lotus anymore. She was Sienna. And for the first time in a long time, she was home. Thank you for reading The General's Stars. If this story moved you, if you felt the heat of the injustice and the triumph of the karma, please take a moment to like this video. It helps us share these stories with more people. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new drama. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Sienna's shoes? Would you have made that phone call? Share this video with a friend who needs a reminder that sometimes the good guys win. Until next time.